Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, on our show, we discuss so many of the issues facing boomers, their parents, and we know, of course, is an aging population, which I fall right into that category. So I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a senior placement and elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families. They'll work with you in determining the right path for you or your loved one and discuss various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, or memory care, or if you just need an advocate to get advice from. A Senior Care Authority advisor will help you and your loved one. So for a free 30-minute consultation with an advisor in your area, you can certainly contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to the website at www.seniorcareauthority.com. Just hit find an advisor, and you could get connected. So and again, I just want to thank everybody for all their support. Our listeners just keep growing, and it's got to be because all of you. I mean, you're sending out our interviews on various podcasts to others to listen to, and that's how it grows. Amazing what the internet does, and sharing information, whether it be on your social media sites or just emailing it over. So thank you so much for your support. And we got a great guest today. Her name is Lynne Lancaster. Her career spans from the creation of two companies dedicated to bridging the generational divide. She's an award-winning keynote speaker, a teacher, trainer, writer, and frequent expert commentator in the media. Lynne is co-author of the bestseller When Generations Collide: Who They Are, Why They Clash, and in her most recent book, The M Factor: How the Millennial Generation is Rocking the Workplace, garnered a gold medal from the Axiom Business Book Awards for its portrayal of this newest cohort. So, Lynne, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers today.
Frank, thanks for having me. I love talking about generations. It's my favorite topic in the world, so it's fun to chat with you.
Yeah, you're the expert at this, so we're going to learn a lot. And, I kind of want to bring it down to basics in my first question. All right, sometimes people say, well, what's kind of the age group of the boomers? What's the age group of the Gen Xers? So whether you tell us in age or tell us in however you want to describe it, help us understand these various multiple generations, if you can.
Sure. One of the things that everybody is struggling with right now at work and at home and in the marketplace is that we have 5 pretty distinct generations showing up across the boardroom table or even across the dinner table. And having to sort out 5 different generations is a challenge. So a good starting place is to think about how they break down by age, and then as we dive a little bit deeper, we can think about how these generations differ in terms of how they see the world. So right now, today, at work, we have our traditionalist generation born prior to 1946. So people born before the end of World War II, and then they were followed by that great big baby boom generation. Soldiers came home from the war. Optimism reigned, the economy was expanding, and we had lots and lots of babies born. Boomers were the biggest generation born in U.S. history, about 80 million strong. And then they were followed by a bit of a baby bust. That's what we call Gen X. Only about 60 million Gen Xers compared to that huge population of 80 million boomers. So if you're in Gen X, 1965 to 79, give or take,
right.
If you're in that group, you probably are in demand career-wise because there just are not going to be enough Gen Xers to kind of take the place of boomers as they move up and out of the workplace. after Gen X, boomers and Xers finally got around to having some babies, and then we had the next big boom. That's the millennials, born 1980 to give or take 97, and 82 million, still growing due to immigration. So Millennial Generation, you might have heard them called Generation Next. They've had a lot of names, but most people call them the millennials, about 82 million of those. And now we're seeing, just entering the workforce, is Gen Z. And they're approximately college down to kindergarten, around 1995 to 2012, approximately. These aren't perfect measures. These are snapshots. About 72 million Gen Zers, and we're already doing research on them and finding them to be quite different from millennials. So for all the workplaces and marketers who haven't figured out the millennials, well, guess what? You've got a new generation coming along that they have to learn all about as well, which is what makes it fun.
So I just had a thought, and I hate to put you on the spot here because I didn't prepare you for this question, but sometimes I just, think of things. All right.
Of course. That's what this topic's all
yeah,
about,
so,
to get people thinking.
Right. So, I'm a boomer, okay? I'm right smack in the middle of all that, all right? And I have a lot of friends who know I'm in this industry, in the senior care industry, and they don't have any children, all right? Couples, single people, they made the decision not to have children, okay? And many of them go, what am I going to do? Because, you hear from people all the time, when I'm going to need care, my kids will take care of me, which, we highly recommend you don't count on, But do you happen to know what percentage, and if you don't worry about it, but do you happen to know what percentage of, boomers don't have children?
I don't know that. That's a really interesting question, and I don't know.
Yeah, I just hear about it more and more because they're
even if they had one child, then they've got these small families.
Right.
The U.S. is now below even. We are actually losing population every year. We've been replacing that with immigration.
Right. But
there are not going to be enough kids of boomers to look after those parents and aunts and uncles.
Right. Yeah, it's. And again, it's just in my people that I know, I get hit with that question so often. Like, what am I going to do? Who's going to take care of me if I, need the care? Sure. So I know you've studied these various generations in the workplace. You've got books on it, which we'll talk more about. Your books and you have speaking engagements. So one thing that I'm seeing, and I'd love to get your viewpoint on it, is, the younger people in their 20s and 30s now, it's pretty common if they're at work and they go, hey, boss, I just got a call from the school, my kid's school, and, she's sick or she fell and I gotta go. All right? That's pretty normal. We're used to that. All right? But now with people living longer, which they are, all right, they're beating other diseases that killed them in the past, whether it been heart disease or whatever, cancer. They're beating a lot of this and living longer. So now you got the boomers who are at work, and it's, hey, boss, I just got a call. My dad had a fall, and I got to go. And what I have read and I've talked to people is because they're at a vulnerable age in the workforce where they're a little fearful that they could lose a job and get replaced by a younger person. Many of them aren't telling their bosses the truth of why they have to leave. All right? Because if they think they're going to have to keep taking time off or whatever, it's a concern. Whether it's reality or not, it's a concern. Do you think corporate America is just ready for this? Because this is happening now, and it's going to continue to happen. I just want to get your thoughts.
Because the economy is strong and workers are in demand, corporate America is likely to get ready for whatever workers agitate for. So we will see more and more people saying, I don't have kids, I haven't used any of my family leave, but I'd like to use it for my parents now. And the more people push on that and request it and bring it up, the more it's going to be on the radar of companies. Right now, I think it's probably not. In the more progressive companies, they have policies that aren't as specifically defined, so they have emergency leave policies that you could use for a child or for your spouse or for yourself, and that'll probably extend to the parents. But we need to start just inviting that conversation, going into HR and saying, wow, my dad's got Alzheimer's, I may need my life to be a little bit more flexible. Can you tell me what our policies are? What leeway do I have? Or going to the boss and giving them a heads up and saying, I love my job and I want to be here, but I really care about my parents and I'm going to need some flexibility. So we need to start that conversation. I'd really say start it before things become a crisis so that you know what's available to you and you don't feel as nervous about taking advantage of it. But overall in the U.S., we've got a challenge because we are workers and we're dedicated, and people are really afraid if they take advantage of some of these flexible policies that they're going to be sidetracked or they're going to be viewed as not being as ambitious or not as good a worker because they take time off for these softer things. And that's going to be a negotiation between employers and workers. We've got to get more comfortable taking advantage of what we have available to us. And I think getting more realistic about it now before mom and dad are really, really sick is probably a good idea.
So that boomer in there around 60-ish, still working, okay? And the fact is, because I hear it, there's been studies on it, like you said, I would agree with you that you should have that conversation. You got a parent with Alzheimer's, you should go to HR, you should talk to them. But so many of them are not doing that because they're in fear that they're going to bring in that, young person in the 30s and, they're going to say, oh, your job's been eliminated. And before you know it, you got somebody in their 30s taking over their role. Okay, so they're in fear of bringing that up.
I understand that there's a lot of fear, and I think for older employees that's a very understandable fear. But it's not just people in their 60s who are caring for elders now. It's Gen Xers in their 40s and 50s. It's reaching younger.
Right.
There are more responsibilities on younger ones because there are fewer of them. So even if it's not your parents, it might be your aunt, or now we're in these blended families. It might be stepmom, stepdad, third wife, who knows? So
it's a great
to go in and ask the question and find out what's available, and don't be so afraid to find out what's available to you.
Yeah. So it's a great segue. Okay. So boomers who are dealing with their parents' situation now, like you said, the Gen Xers soon, or either some are doing it now, will be doing it soon, just based on just based on their personalities, what you've learned about boomers and Gen Xers and the various generation types. Do you think, I look back, you talked about the traditionalists when we first came on the show. At that time, families were living sometimes in the same household or at least nearby, so mom or dad were, they were taken care of, okay? Now people are living longer. Many are getting various forms of dementia. Unfortunately, it's sometimes not so easy to care for them. And then you have the kids who maybe are spread out across the country or across the world. So how do you think these future generations are going to, handle these situations differently as their parents age? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, these are going to be demanding generations as far as being healthcare consumers and consumers of care for their elders. Because when you look at baby boomers, Gen Xers, and now millennials, we have grown up in a world where we're not afraid to hire things done. I think that traditionalists were very much raised with that Great Depression mentality. If you could do it yourself, why would you pay someone to do it?
Right.
And for baby boomers, where we really saw the advent of the women's movement and two career couples, and we saw them become the best educated generation in U.S. history. So they were out using their education and degrees to do what they do best. And then we saw a rise of more of a consulting culture and a culture of people who can come and do for us. So with Gen Xers, boomers, millennials, we are more willing to hire help. So that's one thing. We're going to be just like your own firm, which is such an incredibly valuable service.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be more willing to hire the kind of help we need. And then secondly, we've seen advent of technology. And so we're going to be wanting to use tech solutions to help look after elders. So we're going to be more able to have cameras where you can click on and take a look at how your elder is doing. We're going to be able to FaceTime with an elder who might be home during the day and we're at work, but we can get them on FaceTime. We're going to have more services that they could use. Maybe they could click on and have groceries delivered right to their room or to their house.
Mm-hmm.
More accessible panic buttons, more accessible tools in the house to help them be safe. So I think it's going to be more complicated for caregivers because we're going to be demanding more services, better care, more communication, and more uses of technology. Even right now, lots of people who leave their dog in the kennel, you can click onto a website and watch a live cam of what your dog is doing all day.
Right.
Now we see summer camps for kids where you can click on the summer camp website and see live streaming cams of what the kids are up to. Camps are posting pictures every single day so the parents can check in. Parents that are used to that kind of access are going to want that kind of access to look after their elders. And I think this is going to put pressure on caregivers to be more attentive, more high-tech. That's going to be a strain.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I look at one of the greatest challenges that families have as a parent ages when that doctor says, your dad or your mom can't be driving anymore. All right? And that's devastating. That, once you start losing your independence, it's very, very challenging. But now, pretty soon, you're going to be able to say, listen, Dad, we got you a car. You're not going to be driving it. It's going to be a self-driving car.
With self-driving cars, that's going to change. I'll tell you, my mom is 84,
right.
And she's using good judgment about her driving. And I flew into Minneapolis last week to visit her, and she called my cell phone and said it's snowing. It's 13 below, and the roads are icy, so I prefer not to come and pick you up at the airport. I thought, okay, good for you. I'll just take an Uber.
Yeah.
And so when I got to her house, I said, Mom, she has a smartphone. I said, let me put the Uber app on your phone, and let's go ahead and put your credit card information in. And then if there's a night you don't want to drive to go to your band practice or your church meeting, you can click on Uber, and they will just come and take you.
Right.
And I think obviously this is for people who could afford a $20 Uber ride to get over to the church.
Right.
So that's going to be a differentiator for elders, is who can afford a little more help.
Yeah.
But already with technology, we're seeing this great divide between the elders who can access technology to make their lives a little bit better, and that's going to help us immensely. If she couldn't afford it, I could put my credit card on there, show her how to get the Uber, and then she's got a door-to-door helper, so she doesn't have to drive.
Yeah.
And I think these generations of helpers, of kids, are going to find ingenious new ways to make their elders' lives a little easier and safer.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great point.
Another one, I'll just give one more example.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got my mom into doing Blue Apron. I started doing Blue Apron, and I've really been enjoying it. If you're not familiar with it, it's a meal service. You can order it, and it comes in a box once a week with these laminated recipes and all of your ingredients. And I noticed that my mom was just bored with cooking and tired of cooking for one, and she was eating kind of frozen things that she'd get at the grocery store that weren't super nutritious or great. And I got her the first box of Blue Apron, and she got really excited about having it delivered. It's Minnesota in the wintertime, and she's trying new recipes and making new things, and it comes as a dinner for two. Well, now she'll invite a friend over and say, "Well, I've got all this food. Come eat with me."
That's great. That's great.
So it's another way that I think we're going to be able to introduce some technologies. She had to learn how to go click around on the website to deal with when to deliver it or when to cancel it. That was a little confusing, but she's got it down, and she's having fun with it, and it's enriching her life. And that's something my grandmother, who lived to be 93, she got Meals on Wheels, which was wonderful, but it wasn't the healthiest food. It wasn't the things she liked. It wasn't engaging her in cooking. I think there's opportunities that are going to make aging better.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's I was just thinking that is, it's probably healthier than some of the things. Also from a safety standpoint, your mom or anybody. I mean, obviously, if many falls occur in the bathroom and in the kitchen. That's where a lot of falls happen. They reach for a plate in the cupboard, or they go on a little step stool to go reach something, or those that maybe are having some cognitive challenges, of course, may leave that stove on or whatever. So I think closing up the kitchen somewhat and having meals delivered is probably not only more convenient, could be very healthy, but also helps from a safety standpoint, I think. So
sure, I think obviously, and you're such an expert on this, but it really depends on people's level of functioning. But I think there will be solution. I mean, Meals on Wheels, which we have here in our town, is a wonderful solution, especially for people in that situation where we don't necessarily want them turning on the stove. We don't want them getting hurt in the kitchen. And for people who are lonely, to have that driver show up every day with a meal and have a chat and have a live person in your house kind of checking out, make sure you're okay, that's a different set of services that's absolutely needed. And I don't mean to claim that technology is going to replace the human touch. All I'm saying is that we have more cards in our deck of ways that we can help people. I think when the time comes, somebody like my mom will love Meals on Wheels because on a snowy day, she's stuck in her house. She's very gregarious. She's going to love to chat with that person.
Right.
But for the stage she's at right now, these stages of competency are very subtle. For the stage my mom is at now, what I've noticed is using this meal solution got her back into cooking. So when I was just at her house for a week, she would say, "Oh, well, tonight I'm going to make salmon with wild rice." I'm like, "Oh, you've already." She had already made a plan, thought through the menu, organized herself, organized the kitchen, and did the meal. Whereas when I'd been there a few months ago, she said, "Well, I don't really have anything on hand, and I didn't really think of a meal."
Right.
So it had changed her planning and cooking and confidence around being in the kitchen, which I think makes her useful life in the kitchen, which I think is good for her health and her mentation and her nutrition and everything else. So I was really, really intrigued by that.
I'd agree. So, I mean, I know you don't come from the healthcare industry, but, I guess years ago, at least, my grandparents, you either were at home, right, being taken care of, maybe by a family member, or you were in a nursing home. Those were the choices. Okay. Yeah. Then we start getting into the 90s, where this thing came about called assisted living. All right, which is, hey, you've got a caregiver. They may not be a nurse, but to kind of take care of just basic, what we call ADLs, or activities of daily living, transfers, toileting, whatever the case may be. And they have grown just crazy. All right. In California alone, there's over 8,000 of them. all right?
Wow.
And this could be anywhere between a 6-bed house to a large, 200-bed type of a community, as they call, all right? The boomers, and I'm one of them, always change. They change things. I mean, do you think that, what do you, as those that are kind of in their, let's say in the 60-ish range, and now they're moving into their late 70s, 80s, where, and they're going to need care. They're not necessarily going to be able to take care of themselves anymore. And now their kids are spread out all over the country. What do you think, just based on your studies and what you know, what are going to be their demands as far as the type of community or type of accommodations, if you want to call it, that they're going to want? What do you think?
I really love the aging in place concept, where people can move to a place where if their health changes, or they are suddenly widowed, or they need a higher level of care, they can kind of stay within the community they're in and not have to move to someplace else, because I think moving is just so disruptive for people.
Exactly, I agree.
So aging in place, I think, is brilliant. And one of the big things I've noticed with elders is there's such a divide between extroverts and introverts. It's a funny thing, but I've noticed that people who are more extroverted want to be around people more, and are really stimulated by going down and having breakfast with others in the dining room and going to more group activities. And then people who are a little more introverted want to make sure they're going to also have privacy. I don't want to have to talk to people every time I stick my head out the door. So that seems like an interesting thing to manage. Mm-hmm. People really like to have a variety of activities. In my grandmother's day, the activities might have been very, very passive and simple, maybe shuffleboard or cribbage or watching a movie. Baby boomers have had the great fortune of traveling and learning and exploring and being. I think the amount of activities available is going to really explode and be very stimulating and exciting for people. So I love that. A couple funny side issues: storage. People downsize, but that's quite a process, and people in our world now have a lot of stuff. So storage is going to be an issue as we think about building places, and animals is another big issue.
Right.
A lot of people put off moving into some type of level of care or for situation because they have pets and they want to be able to bring them.
Yeah, and more and more places. It's interesting you bring that up. More and more places are accepting. You bring your pet with you.
That.
Yeah, you bring your pet with you.
I think it's just wonderful, and I think a lot of traditionalists. I mean, we've moved from a United States where 60% of people lived in rural settings to a United States where 60 to 80% live in more urban settings. But when you look at traditionalists, many grew up on farms and in small towns where animals were everywhere, and for people to be able to be exposed to animals and maybe even plants, garden, and some greenery, it's really healthy and good for people if we can figure out good ways to manage that.
Great. So, I mean, time just flew, so I want to make sure that, you tell people a little bit about, you've written a couple books, tell them about it, how they can get it, and how they can learn more about you and where you're speaking and all of that. So I know our audience will be anxious to hear. Before I do that, I want to give one tip for baby boomers, which is I would suggest you start talking about your wishes now. Yeah, absolutely. Communicative. Boomers, we think we're going to be fit and fabulous forever. We think we're going to live forever. We think we're never going to need help. That's not true, and we need to talk about what our values are and just begin the conversation so that we can open that door and not keep it so secret. So important. And for me, I love the generations. I have a book called When Generations Collide, which is about what happens when 4 generations show up in the workplace. And then a more recent book is called The M Factor, how the Millennial Generation is rocking the workplace. So if you're interested, or you're raising millennials, or you are a millennial at work, it's called
called The M Factor by Lynne Lancaster and David Stillman. All of these books are available in your bookstores or on Amazon. And I'll give a plug too. My business partner just came out with a new book on Gen Z. Those are the kindergarten to college. My business partner is a Gen Xer, and he wrote it with his Gen Z son, who is 18 years old.
Oh, great.
It's called Gen Z at Work by David and Jonah Stillman. And fascinating to see what the big workplace trends are, and just general who these kids are. It's pretty fascinating.
Great.
So Gen Z at Work, that's another book too. It's always fun to read about the generations.
It sure is.
It's about work. It's about home and family and our communities. It's a big topic.
Lynn, I could talk to you all day long about this subject matter. Thanks so much for joining us. Lynne Lancaster. Is there a website that people could go to learn more about where you're speaking and things like that?
Yeah, I typically do corporate speaking at private events. And
Gotcha.
I do keynoting, so I don't really have public events, but if you're interested in a keynote speaker, you can find me on LinkedIn, Lynne Lancaster, or LynneLancaster.com, LYNNELANCASTER.
Great.
Happy to chat.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us and on the Aging Boomers. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the Aging Boomers. Keep getting the word out. We really appreciate it. Just be safe out there, and we'll talk to you all soon.